Hey everybody, this is Chris from Freethinkers Corner, Books and More on Central Ave, 652 Central Ave in Dover. And today we have with us live Elizabeth Veer, and she has her debut novel, The Ocean in Winter. Fantastic book. She's here for a little bit longer doing a book signing. And Elizabeth, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your book?
Well, sure. My name is Elizabeth, and I come from Georgetown, Massachusetts. And I've been writing for a bunch of years. And this is my debut novel. And it is the story of three sisters who are adults. And when they were children, their mother committed suicide. And now their lives are at a turning point. And what happens next depends with how they process their grief. And there's a little bit of a mystery. There's a little bit of romance. And so I've heard that it's a good page turner.
So when did you start writing the book?
I started writing this, actually the first draft of it came when I was actually pregnant with my daughter, who's now 10, so about 10 years ago. And then I came back to it a few years later and realized that what I'd started working on wasn't quite the book I wanted to create. So I rethought about it, thought about what I loved in the story, and I pulled that part out, added some more ingredients, and that's what we have today.
How did you come up with the story itself? What a drama and all that versus science fiction or mystery or something like that? What drew you to this particular genre?
Absolutely. So we were house hunting, and we looked at a lot of old houses up on the North Shore in the area where we ended up buying a house, and it felt like we went into all these old houses, and each house had a story to tell. And it was so interesting. So I took that piece, and I thought I wanted to write a book about ghosts. But if it had to be about ghosts, it had to be about the people in the story being haunted. So it was about people and the houses they lived in, and the houses very much reflecting kind of what the people are going through. And the story about the haunting is a reflection of how the people themselves are haunted by something. And I had to think about something that would happen in a person's life that you would carry with you, through all the different changes of life. And it occurred to me that was definitely something you would hold on to for a long time, that very complicated grief around losing someone from suicide. And then I started thinking about the two sisters at first. And then I had the idea for a third sister, and I had to really kind of think about if that was important. And then it's the youngest sister story that really adds so much tension and interest to the story. So I'm really glad that she kind of came out of the ether world and joined my book.
So now this takes place on the coast.
It does. It takes place in Newburyport.
Yep.
And that's because when I wrote it, my daughter was little, and we had a lot of playgroup friends in Newburyport, in Newbury and Amesbury, and those are the places where the book is set, because that's where we were.
So was it a particular house that gave you that story, or was it just sort of a conglomeration of different parts of different house stories?
Yeah, kind of a conglomeration. Just sort of the idea that, not a specific house, but we did, before my daughter was born, my husband and I took a trip out to Smith Island in Maryland, which is, forget Nantucket. It's a very quiet, kind of semi-inhabited, it's a little bit of like crumbling around the edges, kind of a little island. And it just made me think about all the different lives we go through as people, and the houses go through, and towns go through all these different stages. So that's kind of what made me think about it.
So will people recognize some certain places or names?
Absolutely. Yeah. If people know the North Shore area, Newburyport, Newbury, Amesbury. Let me think. No, we don't go to Georgetown in this book, but the one I'm working on now is set in Georgetown. But we'll have to wait for a while. But definitely, you'll recognize Plum Island in here, and downtown Newburyport, and all of the marshes that are out there on Route 1A, and Tendercrop Farm, and Indian food and pizza kind of joins the mix. And so definitely people who have spent time in those areas will feel right at home.
So when did you start writing? Did you always want to write a book, or was it just something that all of a sudden just came up that, I kind of want to, all these stories just kind of inspired you to try to write a book, or did you start as a young kid writing stories?
I started writing when I was a young kid, and but then there have been sort of like waves of trying to write something and feeling like it didn't quite catch. When I went to college, I was a dual major in theater and religious studies, but I was also the writing person, and I did the literary magazine, and I wrote a play, and was always writing poetry and stories and all of those things. And then I went to graduate school for religious studies. But after that was done, I kind of felt like, okay, it's time to like hunker down and really try to write. And after I got married, I had the opportunity to change my working schedule. So then I was working part-time for someone else, and I could really give half of my days in a real serious way to writing. And so that's when it started, and I finished, this is actually the third novel that I wrote, and my agent tried to sell the first two novels, and then this is the first one that found a publisher. So I don't know what will happen with those other two, but we'll just have to wait and see.
So how different was it to go from writing poetry to a screenplay or a play to writing a novel?
Right, yeah, very different. It's something about the commitment of your energy and your consciousness. You have to really, I felt like had to really be ready to just dive into something and be comfortable with staying there for a long time. And there's a woman I follow on Instagram who does exercise classes, and she keeps saying you better get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's how it feels a little bit with a novel, because it feels sort of like you're walking on a road, and suddenly you find yourself somewhere and you're like, I don't think this is the right direction, so what do I need to do now? Or do I just need to power through to the end and change it later? Or do I need to throw everything I've written away and start over? And it's hard to make those judgment calls. I feel like it just takes a lot of commitment to decide, because that is part of the process, is going on the wrong road. I can't start a novel. I can't begin the novel unless I know basically where we're going to end the novel. But what happens in between, there are so many surprises. And sometimes the surprises, go in really helpful directions, and sometimes they don't. And so it's just a matter of staying the course and just constantly asking yourself if this is the right story. And then sometimes you finish it and somebody tells you, no, this thread isn't quite right. Maybe you want to just take that out. But when you're in a poem or a screenplay or a play, it does feel like you can just kind of get a picture out faster, and you can kind of stay with it faster. And for me, writing a novel, it's just like a marriage. You just gotta be ready to sit down and stay with it.
So you said you had the beginning, you had the end. Did you outline the middle part, or did you just more kind of came up with freelance?
Yeah, I did.
Pantser.
Pantser, exactly. I totally pantsed this one. And as I've said before, it's a story of three sisters, but in the original idea that I had was just about the older two sisters. And then I had the idea that maybe there was a third sister, and she kind of popped up, and I had to do a lot of thinking about whether that was the right direction. And once I gave her once I really focused on her and let her come in and start to tell her story, that's when I realized she took it over. She really is the energy behind the book. So I'm glad she came through to me, because she's a neat character, and she gave rise to both the mystery that's in here and the romance, and everything in between. So this was very pantsed and very sort of open to the creative process.
Now the next one is you kind of go in the same way with that one, or is it more structured?
I guess I would say it's for me, and I'm still so early in the process. It is still that kind of hybrid. Like I know all the things that are happening. I know the characters. I know the setting very well. I know where we're starting. I know where we want to end. And then there are just those little pathways in between that we're trying to work out. So I would say it's a mixture.
Now, will this be a sequel to The Ocean and Winter, or could it be a standalone?
No, I do.
Is it the same characters, or are they?
No, brand new characters.
Okay.
Brand new characters. Although some of the themes are very similar. Definitely themes about grief. It's about a teenage young man who went missing 20 years earlier, and now his very good friend is sort of trying to not only figure out what happened to him, but also the ways that affected her life. So similar themes, but there's much more. It's even darker, I would say, than this one. And I actually joined the Sisters in Crime New England group, which with Edith Maxwell and Connie Hambley, who are my friends, and unfortunately, there's no real crime in this book, but the next book will have terrible people doing terrible things.
That's what I was going to ask.
If that's what you like.
what would you, if you were going to a bookstore, what would you expect to see? What section would you expect to see this?
I think literary fiction.
Fiction?
Yeah.
Sort of contemporary.
Yeah.
And the next one would be more in a mystery,
Maybe
or
a little more mystery. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned that you throughout the process you had to make decisions about this and that. One decision you did make was to go with a traditional publisher versus self-publishing. How did you make that decision?
Well, that's a really good question, because I did look into self-publishing for a real solid year. I was very committed to doing it. And I got an extra edit done, and I had a cover designed by the wonderful Sheila Smallwood, and I thought that's what was happening. And then my agent contacted me and said, "Oh, I've sent the manuscript off to a couple more editors," and I said, "What? I didn't. I thought we were all done." And he said, "No, we've got a couple more." So then I said, "Well, let's get those rejections so that we can move on with the self-publishing." In the end, I think self-publishing is an absolutely fantastic route, and if you're writing a series, or if you're writing something with a niche readership, like if you can really target in on who you're trying to contact, I think it's fantastic, and I think it's just great that people have a way to connect with the books, and the authors have a way to get the books to the readers. But for my writing, it's really literary fiction, and it's definitely standalone. I don't really imagine a sequel happening to this, and it didn't feel like a good fit. It felt sort of like maybe I'll be able to get it out there, but it's probably not the best route for me. So when I had the opportunity to work with Blackstone Publishing, I really felt like that was going to be a much better fit, and I would say it has been. They've just been wonderful.
So did you go out looking for an agent, or how does that work?
I had an agent already.
You did?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I had an agent. My agent came to me, or we connected just after my daughter was born, so about 9 years ago. And it's a funny story, because my first novel is about the Dust Bowl, and my husband, I had been looking for an agent for a long time, and my husband said, "Well, I can help." So I went to Google, and he searched for literary agent Dust Bowl, and he found a note on my agent's website that said, "If you have a children's book about the Dust Bowl, please do not send it to me." So my husband emailed him and said, "What about an adult book?" And he was willing to give it, a read, and then, cut to the chase. He ended up representing me. So
Great.
yeah.
So when can we expect to hear more about your second one?
My second one. Oh, well, I don't know. I have to finish writing it first.
All right. Well, you definitely keep us surprised as to when.
Absolutely.
When there's a date and stuff. But for now, The Ocean and Winter is available here. Elizabeth is going to be on her way out here in the next few minutes. But before she goes, she will be signing the rest of the book, so we will have signed copies here. for you. And if we run out, we get more. She comes back and she signs them.
I'll come back.
And there's your daughter.
I'll come back, and here's my daughter, Amelia.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, Chris. I've really had a great time here at a Free Thinkers Corner.